Hello everyone! Thank you very much for joining us for another story here at Annie Narrates. Today's story's title goes like this. Jealous stepsister announces her pregnancy at my party and no one says anything. So I bid my time and years later, do this at her wedding. Now she blames me for everything. My father cheated on my mother with my stepmom Carrie. My parents got divorced and my mother moved away so she could start afresh in another country. She would sometimes call me and my dad from her new place, but when she got married again, she stopped calling me altogether and has never reached out to me ever since. Eventually, my dad married Carrie, who also had a daughter named Rachel. She was 2 years older than me. My father and Carrie also have a daughter called Gina, who is the youngest among us. While growing up, I have always known that my oldest sister Rachel never liked me. She doesn't have any issue with my younger sister Gina, but has hated me for some reason ever since we met. Rachel was my first bully and would bully me throughout my school years. When I reached my teen years, I started finding my individuality. Punk clothing, dark makeup, heavy metal, and so forth. Rachel, who was a girly girl, would make fun of me in front of my friends and call me names like Cruella. Every day with Rachel was a nightmare. Whenever I tried talking to her, she would scream into my face to get away from her, or to just go on and off myself. It was hurtful and traumatizing to hear my older stepsister wish such terrible things on me. Both our parents saw this going on, but they stayed out of it, even though they saw how cruel her words and actions were on my mental health. When my stepsister started to get physically violent with me, that's when my dad finally stepped in. He threatened to kick her, which scared her straight. Since then, she kept to verbal abuse only whenever our parents weren't around. My younger sister Gina was always kind to me and loved me. I taught her to put on makeup, bought her first heels, and was there for her throughout her breakups. We have always continued to have a good relationship to this day. Somehow, Rachel hated this and told Gina several times to stay away from me when we were growing up, but Gina didn't listen to her. I thought things with Rachel would be better once she moved out, but I was wrong. She continued to dislike me, but I finally felt free when I didn't have to see her around home anymore. In my family, reaching 18 is considered a big deal. When my cousins and Rachel's had their 18th birthday, they threw big parties with their friends and families and generally had a great time. This made me excited for my own 18th birthday, which was approaching. I was looking forward to my birthday celebration. Well, a week before my 18th birthday, Gina called me to tell me that the oldest was pregnant, but she hadn't told everyone yet. I was surprised by this news since Rachel wasn't yet married. I did know that she had a longtime boyfriend named Faz, so I was happy for her until I realized that Rachel might try to sabotage my birthday. I felt my stomach drop. I knew what was going to happen, and sure enough, it did. On the day of my birthday, the cake was brought out and as people started singing happy birthday to me, my stepsister suddenly stopped everyone telling them that she had something very important to announce. I didn't even get a chance to blow out the candles when she loudly announced that she was pregnant with her first child. Although I knew there was a high chance she would have announced her pregnancy on my birthday, I thought she would at least wait for me to cut my cake. Aunts and uncles flocked to her, giving her congratulations. After the announcement, the atmosphere at the party became tense. My parents tried to salvage what was left of my birthday, urging me to cut the cake and continue with the celebration. Rachel, however, wasn't done. She came up to me with a smug grin, trying to hug me and whispered, "Considered it your happy birthday gift, stepsis." I wanted to cry, but didn't want to give her the satisfaction of watching me break down. I walked out of my own birthday party while my parents ran behind me telling me that I should let this go. Since then, I decided to stop inviting Rachel to my birthday parties. Gina also decided to keep her distance from Rachel after seeing how she treated me. Over the years, I stopped talking to Rachel altogether. When I was getting married to my then fiance Paul, I didn't want to invite Rachel to my wedding. My mom begged and begged me to let her come so that other relatives wouldn't think that we had any bad blood between us. Reluctantly, I agreed, hoping that on my special day, Rachel would at least attempt to behave. Paul and I have saved every penny so that we could have the dream wedding we wanted. The one thing I was absolutely looking forward to was my wedding dress. I've always had issues with my self-esteem, so I wanted to feel like $1,000,000. All in all, my dress was over $1,000, and there was beading and some embroidery all over the bodice and hem, trilling up and down the skirt. It made me feel like a princess, and I was really happy with my wedding dress. I shared pictures with my family after buying it, and everyone complimented my look. The only issue was that I needed some alterations on my hip, as I was a size smaller. Alterations can be pricey, so I asked my grandma, who I knew would be happy to help me. My grandma agreed and asked me to come and give it to her. Luckily, Gina was throwing a family get-together that weekend, where my grandma was coming as well, so I decided to give my wedding dress to her there. Gina asked me to keep the dress in her master bedroom where no one would ever touch it. Since we closed the door, I knew her cats wouldn't be able to get it to it also. My grandma was running late, so I just decided to wait it out downstairs for a bit. She got there about 45 minutes into the party, but we got caught up in conversation before we could go see the dress. During this time, Rachel arrived and was warmly greeted by everyone. She approached me congratulating me on my upcoming wedding. I thanked her, and she asked me how my wedding preparations were going. I told her how Gina had been helping me, and I also mentioned to her about my wedding dress, which needed a bit of altering, so I had brought it with me so that our grandma could fix it. She also asked me about my fiancé and our relationship, and overall our conversation seemed to be going well. Then we were called for dinner and I got busy with my other relatives. My grandma eventually approached me, telling me that she wanted to see my dress now, so me and Gina took her upstairs. When we opened the door, I screamed in shock. The bodice of my dress was torn right in half in the front, with the beads everywhere, embroidery wrecked, and the skirt ripped up. All I could do was sit and cry over my dress. Hearing my wails, my parents and Rachel came running upstairs. My stepmom was shocked to see my dress all torn up and started to console me. Rachel remarked that maybe one of Gina's cats had got to my dress and destroyed it. Gina shook her head, saying that we had closed the door when we left the room, so it was impossible for the cats to get in. Moreover, she continued to defend her cats, saying that they would never be able to cause so much damage to my dress as they were well trained. At this point, I continued to cry my eyes out and begged my grandma to fix it. My grandma told me that she wouldn't be able to do anything now as the bodice was torn in the front, which couldn't be hidden up. She also informed me that an estimate for repairing the dress would be high. I was beyond devastated, while Gina and my stepmom continued to console me. My dad offered to buy me a wedding dress, telling me that since I didn't take any money from my parents for my wedding, I should allow him to buy me a wedding dress at least. I was heartbroken as my heart was already set to getting married in this dress, but I had no other choice left. We joined back the guests downstairs, and I tried my best to get over my sadness. Later that night, Gina called me in a panic. She told me that she had hidden cameras in her house as she lived alone, and it was for her safety. She told me that she had found something that would explain how my dress got ruined. Her voice quivered as she told me that she was going to mail it to me so I could see it for myself. I downloaded the video quickly from my mail and I watched it. To my horror, I saw Rachel entering Gina's master bedroom with a pair of scissors. She started to hack at my dress. Once she had made some marks on it with the scissors, she then ripped out my embroidery with her bare hands. I was appalled after watching the video. Rachel, my stepsister, had intentionally destroyed my wedding dress, the one I had envisioned walking down the aisle in, with so much care and excitement. Enraged and hurt, I immediately called Gina back, who was understandably just as shocked as I was, and assured me that she had no idea that Rachel would resort to such an extreme act of sabotage. I told her that I couldn't let Rachel get away with this, and I was going to confront her regarding this, to which Gina agreed, saying that she would stand by me. The next day, I asked Rachel to come to our parents' place where I and Gina were driving to as well, under the pretense that I wanted to discuss wedding plans with everyone. I knew Rachel wanted to be a bridesmaid, so she excitedly arrived without any suspicions. I switched on my laptop and told my parents and Rachel to watch a video. They sat down curiously to look at it. I started the video and watched all the colors drain from Rachel's face as she recognized what the video was about. My dad, enraged, started to question her about why she would do such a heinous thing. Rachel's eyes started to water, and she tried to deny, but there was nothing much she could do when I had the video as evidence. As you can imagine, we had a nasty fight where Rachel accused me of trying to ruin her life and steal the spotlight for myself, while I accused her that she had knowingly ruined my dress and would now have to pay for it. It was a chaotic scene, with emotions running high and accusations being thrown back and forth. My stepmom, clearly trying to justify Rachel's actions, attempted to mediate, but it was evident that the damage had been done. In the midst of the confrontation, Gina stood by my side, offering support and emphasizing the gravity of Rachel's actions, and yelled at Rachel that she needed to get over her jealousy. The atmosphere in the room was heavy with tension. As the truth unfolded, Rachel, realizing the severity of her actions, finally admitted to her malicious act. She tearfully acknowledged her jealousy and insecurities, confessing that she couldn't bear to see me happy on my wedding day. The revelation left my parents stunned, grappling with the realization that their beloved daughter Rachel had intentionally sabotaged her sister's happiness. Furious and hurt, I decided to cut ties with Rachel and uninvited her from my wedding, realizing that her envy had led to her betray not only our sisterly bond, but also the trust and joy that should accompany such significant life events. My stepmom tried to mediate, but both my dad and Gina told her that Rachel had crossed the line this time. With my wedding dress being irreparably damaged, I had to choose a new one, which my dad paid for me. Despite this ordeal, my wedding went well. I chose to not focus on the negativity with Rachel and instead chose to focus on my life ahead with my husband. I think watching me get married and not be included must have finally made Rachel realize the consequences of her actions. She sent me an air fryer as my wedding gift, along with a note of apology. I ignored it and never replied back to her since I was still hurt over the wedding dress. I stood by my words and never contacted her despite my stepmom begging me to forgive her. Last year, I gave birth to my first son. My husband was with me in my delivery room and was my rock. My parents came to visit me, and to my shock, Rachel was with them. My dad looked at me apologetically and started to explain that they were at Rachel's place when they received a call from my husband that I was in labor. It was a snow day and they couldn't get an Uber, so Rachel decided to drive my parents so they could be there with me. Rachel looked at me sheepishly and started to apologize to me. I nodded my head curtly as I didn't want to ruin this moment. My parents were here anyway, and that's what mattered to me. Later, when we were alone, Rachel again tried to apologize to me. She told me how sorry she was for what she had put me through all those years ago and how she had finally realized her mental issues after she went to therapy. She told me that she knew better now, and as my older sister, she would be there for me in this journey of motherhood. I was a bit taken aback by her sudden change of behavior, and I didn't trust her. I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't quite get a hand on it. But watching her pleading eyes, even though I resented her, I don't know if it was the pregnancy hormones or my exhaustion after giving birth, but I started to cry and hugged her. I decided to forgive her for everything for the sake of my own mental health. It's exhausting resenting a family member, so I forgave her. We talked with Gina as well, who forgave Rachel with the condition that she would never do anything like that to me again. 1 month later, Rachel announced that she was getting married to someone we hadn't even heard about. You see, Faz and Rachel had been together for a long time, even having a kid together, but for some reason, Faz had refused to pop the question to her. Eventually, Rachel left him and met her current partner Gary. This was a surprise to all of us, including our parents, as no one had an idea that things would move so fast in her new relationship. Rachel told us that she wanted all of us to attend her wedding, which was going to be extravagant since Gary was loaded with money. She wanted Gary's family to see how Rachel had her family's support since they didn't trust her much. Clearly, Gary's family was right to be suspicious, as Rachel and Gary hadn't been together for a long time. Rachel desperately wanted to have a good impression of her, so they could accept her. My parents started questioning her why she had not let us meet him yet, and she started making excuses, saying how she wanted to keep it private and she wanted us to meet him and his family directly on the day of the wedding. I felt a bit uneasy and suspicious about that. Why would Rachel not want to introduce us to her future husband before they tied the knot? This is when something clicked in my mind on why Rachel had begged me to forgive her just a month before. She knew she was getting married and didn't want Gary or his family to find out who she truly was. They might not have any idea about her true character and didn't know all the things that she had done with me in the past. They might have questioned her when her sisters didn't show up to the wedding. This is why she had tried so hard to get me to forgive her and also get back on good terms with Gina. She didn't want any of us to meet her partner just in case we spill the truth about her, which would jeopardize her chance of getting married. Realizing this made me feel infuriated and stupid that I had left her off so easily. For years, my stepsister had tormented me, and now that she was marrying this rich man, she had tried to manipulate me so we could act as a one happy family to convince her future in-laws. Well, I needed to teach her a lesson. After my original wedding dress had been destroyed, I kept my beloved dress locked in my cupboard, as I couldn't just bear to throw it away. An idea was forming in my head, and I contacted the best tailor in my area to help me stitch and repair my dress. I was finally going to be able to live my dream by getting to wear my original wedding dress, only this time instead of my wedding. It would be to my sister's wedding. I have always wanted to take revenge on her for destroying my dress for years, so what better opportunity than this to finally teach her a lesson? Since the original bodice of my dress was pretty much destroyed, I asked the tailor to replace the entire bodice, but instead of it being wide, I went with a baby blue color. The skirt could be easily fixed with blue beads that would hide the rib part. So basically, my original wedding dress, which was completely white now, had a baby blue bodice and blue beads on my skirt and embroidery, so it didn't exactly look like a wedding dress, but it was quite fancy. The alterations on my dress had turned better than I expected, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction knowing that Rachel was in for a surprise. I knew Rachel would immediately recognize my dress since she had seen my dress and ripped it up. I couldn't wait to see her expressions. On the day of Rachel's wedding, I arrived alone at the venue since my husband had to stay back with our baby, as Rachel wanted a child-free wedding. Her wedding venue oozed with opulence and sophistication. The grand entrance led into a majestic ballroom, which was adorned with crystal chandeliers and intricate floral arrangements. Adding to the enchantment of the venue were the talented violinists, positioned strategically to serenade the guests with melodies that echoed throughout the opulent space. Clearly, Gary came from an extremely wealthy family, and this is why Rachel had tried to avoid us meeting him before her marriage to him. My parents and Gina had already arrived. Gina almost immediately recognized my dress and looked at me quizzically. My parents, perhaps being forgetful, had no idea about the dress and thought it was just a fancy dress. When the moment finally arrived for Rachel to make her grand entrance, I strategically positioned myself in a place among the guests where I knew she couldn't miss me. As she walked down the aisle with her eyes fixed on Gary, she caught a glimpse of my distinctive dress, which definitely stood out. I saw Rachel's eyes widen in shock, and I knew that she immediately recognized the dress. I also knew that being the hot-tempered, manipulative woman that she was, she couldn't help but react. With a determined stride, she veered slightly off course, making her way towards me, still wearing her pristine white gown. The train of her dress seemed to drag along with her, creating an audible rustle in the silence that had descended upon the venue. The violin's serene melody came to a sudden halt, leaving an awkward silence in the air. The guests turned their heads, their eyes bouncing between Rachel and me, sensing that something unexpected was unfolding. As she reached me, her voice was a mixture of disbelief and anger, audible enough for those nearby to catch the confrontation. "Why are you wearing that dress?" she demanded, her eyes narrowing as she tried to make sense of the unexpected turn of events. I met her gaze with a steady resolve, not giving her the satisfaction of seeing me falter. "Oh, Rachel, don't you recognize it?" I replied, my tone laced with a hint of triumph. "It's the dress you destroyed for my wedding, but I had it altered. I thought I would give it a second chance to make it shine." Rachel's face contorted with a mix of anger and disbelief. "You're just trying to ruin my wedding! This is so typical of you, always trying to steal the spotlight," she accused, her voice escalating in volume. The air in the room seemed to thicken as Rachel's anger intensified. The onlookers exchanged awkward glances, caught in the crossfire of a long-standing family feud. Seizing the opportunity, I decided that it was time to reveal the truth about Rachel's true nature in front of her new in-laws. You know, Rachel, I had the video of you destroying my dress. Maybe I should play it for everyone to see your true character. Maybe I should play it for everyone to see your true character, I threatened, hoping to expose her actions to the entire wedding party. Rachel's eyes widened in panic, realizing that her carefully constructed facade was on the verge of crumbling. In the midst of chaos, I seized the opportunity to address the guests. This is my stepsister who destroyed my wedding dress out of jealousy. She was my first bully and has always made my life hell. Just a month before, she tried to manipulate us into pretending to be a happy family for her new in-laws. Well, I won't let her deceit continue. I'm done playing nice, I declared, my voice resonating with a newfound strength. I locked eyes with Gary, who appeared bewildered by the unexpected turn of events. With a measured tone, I addressed him directly. Gary, before you say I do, there is something you need to know. I just wanted to ask if you and Rachel have a prenup. I continued, maintaining eye contact with Gary. Because if you don't, you might want to reconsider. You see, the woman you're about to marry is not who she pretends to be, and I have evidence. I will be happy to show you the video of her destroying my dress with a pair of scissors like a crazy woman. If she's capable of doing that to her own sister, then just imagine what else she's capable of. The guests shifted uncomfortably, their eyes darting between me and Gary. My parents were too shocked to speak. With that, I handed my phone to Gary. The video queued up the moment of Rachel's destructive act. The room fell into a heavy silence as Gary watched the damning evidence, his expression transitioning from confusion to disbelief and finally settling into a stern resolve. Rachel, realizing that her carefully constructed world was unraveling, attempted to salvage the situation. Gary, it's not what you think. She's just trying to ruin our special day, she pleaded, her voice tinged with desperation. But Gary, having witnessed the truth, gently handed back my phone. I need some time to think, he replied, his tone firm. This is a lot to process. As Gary walked away to gather his thoughts, the guests exchanged murmurs, and the once festive atmosphere remained tainted by the revelation. I turned away from Rachel, knowing that her attempt to manipulate and deceive had backfired in the most spectacular way. I was now ready to leave this wedding, having accomplished what I had come here for. Rachel's carefully planned wedding was taking an unexpected turn, and she looked both perplexed and horrified. I held my head high, walking with confidence down the aisle, making sure to pass by her as I left the venue. Since then, Gina has informed me that Gary never returned back, and the wedding guests eventually had to leave. My stepmother started crying when she realized that the wedding wasn't going to happen and has since been blaming me for destroying her daughter's future. My dad is also pissed at me, as he thinks I should have let things of the past stay in the past. So, here I am on Reddit, seeking strangers' opinions on my situation. Do you think I was an a-hole to expose my jealous stepsister after years of her tormenting me? Thank you to everyone for your honest opinion. I really appreciate it. To everyone asking me why I waited so long to take revenge on her, it's because my original intention wasn't to take revenge on her. Over the years, I have tried talking to her several times, but she never listens to me. Even when I found out how she destroyed my wedding dress, she never took full responsibility for it. I would have let her go, and I thought her apology to me after I gave birth was genuine, but when I realized that she just wanted to make up with me and Gina right before her wedding so that our presence would benefit her narrative that we are a happy family, I didn't want to play along with her. I have no regrets about what I did. Now, coming onto the update, Rachel is an absolute mess. She has been trying to get in touch with Gary, but he has refused to pick up her calls. She and my stepmom have continued to blame me. I know that they are going to eventually confront me about it, and I honestly didn't care since I had spoken no lies. What was bothering me was that my own dad did not have my back. I reached out to Dad today after things had calmed down a bit. We spoke on the phone and he told me how disappointed he was that I humiliated my stepsister. This infuriated me, so I questioned him why he didn't do a better job of protecting me while I was growing up. Had he stopped or reprimanded my stepsis from stealing the spotlight from me, then perhaps we would not be here right now. I told him how painful it was to be constantly overshadowed by her, not just in school but also at home. I told him that I had always felt alone while growing up, since my mom never talked with me, and he was married to stepmom who obviously had Rachel's back. They never protected me from Rachel's bullying, and I had no one else to turn to. Dad was silent for a moment, and I could sense the weight of my words sinking in. Eventually, he spoke in a more subdued tone, acknowledging the pain that I had harbored for so long. I didn't realize how much it affected you, and I'm sorry for not being there for you, he admitted, a hint of regret in his voice. I was surprised that my dad actually acknowledged his mistakes and apologized to me. This conversation became a cathartic release, a long overdue airing of grievances, and an opening for understanding. Hearing the sincerity in his voice, I started crying. My dad, trying to console me, told me that he understood now why I did what I did, and he won't blame me anymore. He urged me to speak to my stepmom whenever I was ready about this, so that she also understands what her daughter had put me through over the years. I told him that I needed some time and would reach out to her soon. I will update next only after I talk to my stepmom. Hi guys, it's been a month since my last update. I've been too busy with my life to even open Reddit. Taking care of a baby is not easy, and since this is my first time, I am beyond tired and exhausted. Now enough of my blabbering, coming on to the update. I did talk to my stepmom just like I had promised my dad. Last week, I decided to arrange a meeting with my stepmom, Carrie, to address the unresolved issues that lingered between us. I reached out to her and requested a one-on-one conversation, hoping for a chance to express my feelings and seek a resolution. Carrie agreed to meet, and we chose a quiet coffee shop where we could discuss matters without any distractions. As I sat across from her, I could sense the tension in the air. Almost immediately, she began to place blame on me. She asserted that my actions had allegedly destroyed Rachel's life and jeopardized her relationship with Gary. She continued to say that I was the one to be blamed and I needed to make things right. I waited patiently for her to speak her mind, and when it was my turn to speak, I began by expressing my gratitude for her willingness to meet. I chose my words carefully, aiming for a constructive conversation rather than a confrontational one. Then I delved into my childhood, recounting the times when Rachel had bullied me and the emotional toll it took on my well-being. I described the loneliness I felt growing up, the lack of protection, and the constant overshadowing by Rachel. Carrie's eyes revealed a glimmer of realization, and I could see that my words were starting to resonate with her. Carrie attempted to interrupt me mid-track by saying that those were all childish things that Rachel had done in the past, but I retorted back that those things might have been childish, but what Rachel did to my wedding dress, she did it knowingly as a full-grown adult, and just days before my wedding. I told her that I didn't do anything wrong by exposing Rachel's truth, and that it was Rachel who had wronged me in the first place. Carrie sighed, perhaps finally understanding the pain that I had experienced. She admitted that she knew for a long time that her daughter had hated me for absolutely no reason, but she thought over the years Rachel would get over it. She had been torn between her loyalty to Rachel and her responsibility as a stepmother to me. It became apparent that she too had grappled with the consequences of Rachel's actions. She was genuinely remorseful and willing to understand my perspective. Carrie then told me that now that I had done what I did at the wedding, I needed to talk to Gary and convince him to marry Rachel, since he had refused all contact with her after he watched the video. I shook my head and told her that I was not going to do that, since it was completely Gary's decision and I had just simply shown him what Rachel truly is. If he has called off the wedding completely, then there is nothing that I can do at this point. Carrie didn't like my answer and looked disgruntled. The conversation took a turn for the worse, as Carrie then told me that I needed to apologize to Rachel for what I did, at least, since she feels alone after being exposed like that in front of family and friends. However, I refused again, standing my ground and firmly told Carrie that I was not going to get involved with her daughter's drama anymore. I had done what I wanted to do, which was expose the truth, and whatever happens, happens. The rift between us deepened as Carrie struggled to comprehend my refusal to participate in what she perceived as a family obligation. Unfortunately, we had to leave the conversation at a stalemate. It was disappointing but not surprising that even after everything, my stepmom blindly had Rachel's back. Since this conversation with my stepmom, I have talked with Dad and Gina. Both feel that it was the right decision for me to not reach out to Rachel or Gary. Gina vehemently believes that I have done nothing wrong and has told me several times ever since the incident that she is proud that I finally exposed Rachel's evil side. Rachel did reach out to me once or twice after the incident after the wedding but stopped. She has not disturbed me ever since. I guess even she knows that there isn't anything she can tell me. Hi everyone, it's been 3 months since my last update. Everyone has been asking me for an update regarding the Rachel and Gary situation. As far as I know, they never got back together. Gary had no contact with her, and no matter how much Rachel tried, she had no way to get in touch with him. She does blame me for this, and is angry that my dad and Gina continue to talk to me to this day. My stepmom and I haven't been much in contact ever since Gina yelled at her for even meeting me alone. To avoid further conflicts, we don't talk much, but we are polite to each other when we are in the same room. We interact when necessary, but there is an unspoken understanding that certain topics are best left untouched, which is just fine by me. As for myself, I'm doing well, and so is my child. Thanks to all the mothers who gave me their advice regarding motherhood. I really appreciate it. Balancing family and personal goals is a challenge, but I am determined to make the most of this chapter in my life. I have chosen to prioritize my mental well-being and focus on the positive relationships in my life. Alright guys, that was a wrap up for today's story. Thank you very much for listening. Go ahead and smash that like button for me and subscribe for more stories. Thanks again. We will be seeing you in the next one.